This is going to be a big year in politics. There are a number of local elections happening, and of course, there's the presidential election in November. Ahead of that, Milwaukee will host the Republican National Convention, so there will be a lot of attention on Wisconsin. We also play a key role in determining the outcome of the presidential race as a deeply purple state. And that's why we're focusing on you in 2024. To explain our approach to elections this year and what you can expect from WUWM, I'm joined by Lake Effect Sam Woods and Emily Files from the WUWM news team. Emily, do you want to start off by talking about how we're shaping our election coverage?
Right, so like you said, we're focusing on you, we're focusing on the community and the listeners. So a lot of election coverage you see is sort of horse race, who's leading in the polls, who's in, who's out type of story. But we want to be more responsive this year to what our community wants to know. We want to answer questions about voting, about the RNC, about candidates and issues. Basically, we want to create information that's actually useful to people.
Yeah, Emily is spot on about our goals, Joy. As journalists, part of our job is to maintain a sustained dialogue between you and people in positions of power. Our mission for election coverage is to equip Milwaukee-area residents to make decisions that affect change. And what that means for this election season is that as we gear up for this election season, politicians want us to be talking about their messages and their platform, right? They're going to want to stay on message and tell us what is important, right? But what we want is for politicians to be addressing concerns that you already have, not telling you what you should be concerned about. But in order to do this, we need your guidance on what issues you want us to be asking about.
So one way that we're doing that is through this election survey that is publicly accessible on our website.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So this is the first time in my 5 years here that we've done this kind of broad outreach using a survey. So it started out as a way to gather information about how Wisconsinites are feeling about the presidential election in November. And it still is about that, but we also want to hear from people about local issues and local election questions. So when people fill out this survey, it'll help steer what questions we're trying to answer in our coverage and what voices we have on the air.
Yeah, it's really a direct line between people in the community and WUWM. I mean, you get to tell us directly what you care about and what you want to know going into these elections.
So in some cases, we might contact voters for interviews. That is, of course, completely up to each person, whether they want to participate. For example, it's someone who voted for Biden in the past, but they're not sure whether they'll vote for him again. We might reach out to them for a story about people who are on the fence about the candidates.
Right, so it's a way for us to steer our election coverage, but then also find people to talk to, find Wisconsin voters who have stories to share. And undecided voters are actually who we're looking for one of the other projects we're working on this year. We want to hold voter roundtable discussions where we talk in depth with voters about what's driving their decisions, what are they torn about, and we especially want to include undecided voters because elections are so close in Wisconsin. It's the undecided voters who might determine the result.
And the roundtable idea, I think, is a way of getting beyond the sound bites that you hear in a typical radio story. It's rare for someone's full political viewpoints and nuances to be summarized in a 10-second soundbite. People are more complex than that typically. I know I like to think of myself as more complex than that, but people are more complex than that typically. So these roundtable conversations will let us dig into what people are thinking and hopefully help people with conflicting experiences understand each other a little better. And another project we're working on is something that we've done before, a voter guide.
Right, so the voter guide is basically a resource for people to answer any question they might have ahead of an election. How to register to vote, who will be on the ballot, what does the Milwaukee Common Council do, what does the comptroller do, these people's names and positions who you might see on the ballot and you're like, who is this person and why should I care about this election? We want to be able to answer those questions in our voter guide.
We want to hear from the public about what questions they have that we can help answer in the voter guide. So you can submit those questions by filling out the election survey on our website. That is WUWM.com.
And I want to stress that we are truly committed to using your responses to that survey to shape our elections coverage. And one way we'll do that, and I want to add that we're truly committed to using your responses to that survey to shape our election coverage. And one way that we want to do that is through explainer stories.
Yeah, so we've received a lot of questions from the survey respondents so far, and we're going to try and answer as many of them as we can. For instance, tomorrow I'll be giving an overview of what exactly is on Milwaukee's primary election ballot on February 20th. And you'll also hear stories about the mechanics of voting, basically anything you need to know before you head to the polls or vote absentee. And you'll also be hearing some basic voting information throughout the day on WUWM, not just during morning edition and lake effect, and that's to try to reach as many ears as we can. So we're looking at what questions are submitted through the election survey and doing stories based on what people want to know about.
I'm actually doing a short series right now that's explaining what's going on with redistricting, because we just got so many questions about what's going on with that and how it'll impact voters and the elections. It's a very confusing situation that keeps moving. So we'll provide the latest information on the redistricting process, and we'll answer some of the specific questions that we've gotten from the survey. You can hear that tomorrow and for the next few weeks on Lake Effect.
Yeah, and not everything that we're getting in these survey responses are questions. People are sharing topics that they're interested in learning more about, like election integrity, how other voters are feeling, the candidates. The list is endless. So through the survey, we're looking for trends in what people want to know about, and we're going to do stories based on those topics. Our coverage will be in response to what people are wanting to hear and know about, like Joy, your series on redistricting that you just mentioned, which was inspired by questions we were receiving about the topic on our survey.
So yeah, a lot of this is being driven by the survey and us directly asking the community, what are you thinking about right now? What's on your mind as we head into these elections, and what questions do you have for us? So it's trying to put the power in the voter and in the community's hands rather than in the politicians or in the media's hands. So we want to be of service to people. And kind of thinking ahead to this year, our elections coverage in 2024, I'm hoping that we're going to hear more voter voices on the air, not just candidates or pollsters, but regular people. Sam and Joy, what are you hoping will come out of our elections coverage this year?
Well, this may be asking too much, but I do want to shoot for the moon and say that I hope Milwaukee isn't just a spot candidates pay lip service to during an election year before disappearing until 2028. I want to see candidates address issues that you all are asking about on the campaign trail, of course, but especially when they're in office. You know, I want to see direct lines between the issues that you all are telling us about that are important to you this year and the choices that elected officials make once they are actually in office.
I really want people to feel comfortable when they walk into the voting booth, like they have a handle on what these elections are, who these candidates are, and they feel like they're making an informed choice. You know, I hope that we're able to give people real insight into why our politics are the way they are, and ultimately how all of us can work either within these systems or change them when necessary.
And really all this work depends on hearing from people in the community. So if you live in Wisconsin, we want to hear from you. You don't have to live in Milwaukee. You don't have to have voted before. You don't have to have voted for any particular candidate. We really want to hear from everyone about what's on your mind ahead of the elections. What questions do you have? And you can tell us that by filling out our survey. There's a link to it at WUWM.com. And we're looking forward to hearing from you, from as many people as possible.